Hey everyone, this is your host Jay, and today we'll cover the basic fight mechanics of Final Fantasy XIV. From the plains of Lanosea all the way to the arena of Alexander Prime, there are unique mechanics to each fight. But today we're going to focus on mechanics that every Final Fantasy XIV player should recognize on sight. And without any further ado, let's get into it. First mechanic we'll talk about are the orange zones that appear in front of the bosses. Oh yes, this will pretty much be the first thing that will compel you to move out of the way. They come in many shapes and sizes, but they all want to hurt you. You have lines, cones, circles, donuts, and grid patterns. But all of those shapes tell you one thing: whether you get out of the way, or I'm going to hurt you bad. This is kind of the equivalent thing of don't stand on the fire or you will die. This is the first and foremost mechanic to internalize. From this point on, any fight, mob, or trial will use it to kill you. You make sure that you will not die to this mechanic, as you will recognize it immediately. Next up, we have the stack marker. Circle around the player with 4 arrows pointing to the center of said circle. This is the commonly known mechanic called the stack marker. What does it mean? If you get or see someone get this stack marker, the objective is to stack with said player. The more people that stack, the less damage everyone takes. So if you're the player that has the stack marker, make sure you position yourself next to the boss or the mob that has that stack marker, so you allow the melee players to stack with you, respecting the mechanic, but at the same time maintaining damage on the boss or ad. I call this one the mark. You will be marked with the symbol. Sometimes, well, most of the time, it will be red. They come in blue, yellow, and purple. When you get this mark, you have one job and one job alone. You must take yourself to the edge of the boss arena and away from the party, so you can avoid damaging anybody else. Sometimes this is a puddle. As puddles are circles of persistent damage that linger in the ground for a minute or two. It is highly recommended that you take and drop those puddles far away from the center and away from your party as well. So to recap, you get the mark above your head, you take it away from the party, and deal with the mechanics out of the way, usually on the edges of the arena. This one will mark you with a circle around you, in which you are the center of it, and it will move with you until this is resolved. This is called the spread marker. I'll explain the mechanic and specific aesthetics. I mean to tell you that you will be hit. It means to tell you that you will be hit by the end of the cast. The circle symbolizes splash damage, which means that anyone that happens to be inside the circle with you will get hit by it. This mechanic can be resolved in one of two ways. First one, you just take it away from the party and wait for the explosion, then go back to the boss. Number 2, all of the party or DPS gets marked with this. In that case, you're gonna need to spread out in such a way that each circle does not hit more than one person. Sometimes space will be limited. That brings us to an important note. Circles can overlap each other as long as they don't touch the player with said circle. So example, you can overlap your circle with the player next to you, but your circle cannot touch that player. Otherwise, he will take the damage of a spread marker plus your damage, probably killing him. Next mechanic, we call it the eye mechanic. The reason for this name is actually quite obvious. You will see a big red eye on top of the boss's head or on the boss's body himself. This mechanic only requires you to turn around and not face the boss while he's casting this specific mechanic. You see, not only you'll see the eye, but if you're targeting the boss, you will see a bar. Most of the times, this cast will go off as the bar fills up. But if you wanted to make doubly sure, you should stay turned around until you see the actual animation. Once you see it above your head saying you dodged said mechanic, you are good to go to turn around and continue to DPS the boss. Now we move on to the mechanic of meteors. Usually this mechanic is signaled by a shiny circle on the ground with a ray of light going upwards, and you will notice a rock or some sort of orb slowly making its way to the ground. If you see this and no one's standing inside this circle, it will be your job to fill this spot. The point of this mechanic is having at least one player standing inside the circle at the moment the object makes contact with the ground. Failure to do so will result in raid/party-wide damage and added pressure on the healers. Proximity mines. Now this is a cool one, and I call that due to the fact that your damage is calculated based on your proximity to the impact circle. Which means when you do see this sucker on the ground, you need to run the other way and put as much landscape between you and that marker. More distance equals to less damage overall. Triangles, aka Doritos. This mechanic is defined by a red triangle at the top of your head. Mid-fight, or as we call it, the Doritos, this mechanic has an easy way to resolve. You must stack with your fellow Dorito marked players in a location that usually is right behind the boss, as to allow melee players that happen to be marked more of time. On the damage also, if the main tank is marked, it helps with the boss positioning as well. So when you see this on your head, do me a favor and go hug a Dorito player. The knockback is self-explanatory, but more often than not is invisible to you. The identification of this mechanic is left to the fact that your character will be knocked back from wherever the boss or a circle in the ground will be. If it comes from a boss, there will be a cast bar and a specific name attached. And this name will be unique to any boss that casts this specific mechanic. If it's a ground marker, it'll be blue or green, usually called a typhoon or tornado. And last but not least, this mechanic can take another form, one of a yellow area with arrows scrolling in the direction of the knockback. The first two ways you will solve it by standing near the source of that knockback, aka boss or ground circle. The last one, you will have to move to the side where you're supposed to be slid from. So if the knockback is going to be on A to B, you're going to have to be on A to get knocked back to B, which happen to be a safe spot. Active time maneuver. This is, to the lack of a better term, a button mashing session. When this appears on your screen, it will prompt you to press 2 or more buttons as fast as you can. The point will be to fill the bar under the timetable you are given. Usually this is about 2 or 3 seconds. And failure to fill the bar will result in your death or the group's dead. So mash those buttons, warrior light. This is more of a phase than a mechanic, but I feel that this should be included. Usually this is characterized by the inability to target the boss and the appearance of ads. Small monsters that spread around the arena. Usually there are between 1 and 3 individual ads, or 1 and 3 packs of smaller ads. The point of this mechanic will be to defeat the ads before the time runs out. There are 2 ways that this is presented to you. 1, there will be a time limit, which is usually between a minute and a half. But more recently, they added a bar to your HUD. The point of the mechanic will be to destroy the ads before the meter reaches 100. If that happens, this will result in the death of your party. DPS check is a mechanic placed in order to test your overall damage as a party. Failure to pass this mechanic through deficient damage output, will result in a wipe. So make sure that does not happen once you're doing this. And that's it for the video here, folks. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout the entirety of the video. These will be mechanics that will repeat themselves over any fights, whether they are old fights or recent fights. And these should be mechanics that should be internalized as a Final Fantasy XIV player. So I hope the video helps as you make your way across the Eorzean universe, and I will see you in the next video. And until then, peace out.